All right. I want to finish Parshas Toldos today if possible. I want to, because Vayetze is loaded, so hopefully we'll finish it. Okay, so the first thing is, so we're speaking about Yakov and Esav gets the birthright. Yakov buys the birthright. Now, take a look at Perek Chavav, Pasuk Yud Gimel. You got this whole incident of Yitzhak and the Plishtim, Yitzhak meeting the Plishtim on page 130. And he digs the wells, and they cover up the wells, and even the Ramban says, why is the Torah going and elaborate so much on this whole section with the wells? The Torah goes to town over here. But there's a very important idea here with Yitzhak and Avimelech, and they mistreat him. And what you find over here, page 130, gentlemen, what you find over here is that Yitzhak is constantly, he's walking away from Avimelech. Yitzhak backs off, even though he's right. So this goes back to the principle that we had mentioned several times, that the midah of the avos, Yitzchak's midah is midah sadin. Yitzchak's midah is midah of strict justice. So by the laws of strict justice, he should be fighting with Avimelech. Yet he walks away, he backs off. He gives in to him. He's what the Hebrew called mevater. He gives in to the guy who's arguing with, which is exactly the opposite of his nature, which we've mentioned several times, that the test of your nature is being able to do the opposite. Do you control the midah, or the midah controls you? So at a certain point, if you take a look at Pasuk 13, it says on page 130, it says 6 lines from the top. It says, Vayimtza bashana ahi vayizra Yitzhak ba'oretz ahi. Yitzhak plants in that land. Vayimtza bashana ahi mea she'orim. Yes, that's where the neighborhood gets its name. He finds 100 times, it produces, Rashi says, 100 times as much as what he planted. It was a tremendous bumper crop. Vayivracheu Hashem, Hashem blesses him. Then the Torah says, Vayigdal ha'ish, he became even bigger. Vayelech holoch v'godel, he continued growing, prospering. Ad ki godal me'od, till he got very, very big. Vayhilo mikne, tzon, mikne bakar, he had all sorts of holdings. So the Mefarshim explain over here that you'll notice that the Yitzhak did not just, it doesn't just say Yitzhak planted and became fabulously wealthy. He grew in stages. Yitzhak grew in stages. Now, there are a couple of explanations why that happens. Explanation number one is that when a person becomes rich overnight, it can mess you up. Right? They've done studies on people who've won lotteries. You know, people win these lotteries, and then they just mess themselves up. Their whole life is, they go crazy with it. Next thing you know, they're getting divorced, and some of them get suicidal. Then they lose the money, that sort of thing. They had one woman. I remember a woman in Chicago once who won $5 million. It was a long time ago, a lot of money. So they're interviewing her on the news, a live interview. They say, "Well, Mrs. Johnson, what have you got to say?" She just won $5 million. She looks at the camera, and she goes, "Sears Roebuck and Company, I quit." Right? That was, she quit her job. It's not always a good thing. There was a pair of school teachers, I think from Wisconsin, who won $80 million. A couple in their 30s, they won $80 million. And the next day they went back to work. Next day, he's a teacher, she was a teacher, they went back to work. They said, "We're not changing anything." Don't change anything. Maybe we'll go on a vacation, but that's continue what you're doing. Don't let it go. And I don't know. It could be they went back to work one day and then they said, "Hey, what are we doing this for?" And they quit. I'm not sure. I don't know the rest of the story. But the attitude is that just do what you're doing. Don't let it get to you. So number one, if you get rich quick, if you get rich too quick, so it might not be good for you. Number one. Number two, there's also the problem of what we call ayin hara. Now, an ayin hara is where people look at you and they, what does ayin hara really mean, right? When your person, slowly but surely you become rich, it didn't grab anybody, it didn't grab attention. Slowly but surely you were working and you invested and you grow and and it happens in stages. So then there's nothing that calls people's attention to you. And in life, we don't want to call people's attention to our successes, whatever those successes in life. We don't want to call people's attention to it because then you are subject to the ayin hara. Now, what does that mean, an ayin? What is an ayin? How can I look at somebody else and affect them with an ayin hara? How does an ayin hara work? A good question, right? Very curious. What is an ayin hara? So Rav Dessler explains. That when a person is prospering in any way, a person is successful in any way, if somebody resents your success, the reason why is it that certain people are successful and you don't resent, and certain people are successful and you do resent it, right? If a guy's successful, he drives up with a Lamborghini the next day. Guy's doing well, and he pulls up on the block, on a Jewish block, where everybody else has one of those, station wagons to take their 7 kids to carpool, and this guy all of a sudden drives up with a Lamborghini. Right? Why does that trigger out? The answer is because when somebody is doing something that you feel he's gloating, he's kind of showing it off. You sense that he's trying to put it in your face. At that point, it breeds a resentment. That resentment, Rav Dessler says, in Shemayim, back up in heaven, when there's resentment against this guy, so then the ledger is opened again. And then they review the ledger and say, well, does he really deserve this? Does he really deserve the good that he's gotten, the prosperity? If you're low-key about it, I think Warren Buffett lives in the same house he's been living in for the last 60 years. Just a regular house. It's not a big ostentatious house. And he walks every day to buy the newspaper. Which is part of his shtick. Because he said, why should I pay for a delivery if I could walk over and get it? Well, that's fun when you know that you could buy the entire newspaper. You could buy it. It's not fun when you have to do it because you're saving money. When you then it becomes shtick. That sort of thing. My father, Olav Hashem, his greatest joy in life was in the RC. When he used to buy RC pop bottles, so the RC you scrape off. They had the old pop bottles. They had like a metal cap with cork underneath it. And you scrape off this cork, and you could win 10 cents, 50 cents, $5, that sort of thing under the cork. So we were always fighting to scrape off the cork. Every time we won 10 cents was a celebration, right? Why? It wasn't the 10 cents. It was the fact that I beat them. You wanted 99 cents for the carton, we got it for 89 cents. That was a major. I think one time we won 50 cents. I think we ate out at a restaurant that night. That was a major celebration because it's the shtick. It's I beat the system type of thing. It's not that he can't afford it. I beat the system. Here, a person is when a guy wins the lottery. I think there are certain countries. I don't remember how it goes. I think in Israel, you could remain anonymous. If you win a lottery, you can remain anonymous in Israel. Certain states, the United States, if you win, you could remain anonymous. In other places, you have to. The agreement of the lottery is that you have to publicize you. I don't remember where it is. A guy who's publicized that he won. There's no question that there are people who are looking like, he's got my $12 million, and there's a certain resentment there. So Yitzhak, he grows in stages to help to avoid the ayin hara. That's the idea. And in general, a person who is prospering should stay low key, because if you start flaunting it, that's the word I'm looking at. When you flaunt it, it starts to breed resentment. That's the idea. Okay. Now take a look at. Okay. Now we go to the main theme of this parsha. And if you look on page 134, okay, now let's pick it up. Now this is the main theme. We've got to get some clarity here. Vayiki zakein Yitzchak. Yitzchak got old. V'teichena einav miros. He was having trouble. He was blind. Vayikra Esav b'no agodol v'yomer elav b'ni v'yomer elav hineni. V'yomer hineno zakanti. I've gotten old. Lo yadati yomos. I don't know when I'm going to die. Third line. Go get me something to eat. Bring me food, the kind of food I like. Go make me some food, and I'll give you a bracha before I die. And everybody knows that the bracha Yitzhak is going to give is going to be the bracha before his death, even though he does end up living a lot longer, but his bracha, where he feels he's on the verge of death, this is a bracha that is going to affect the destiny of nations. And Esav, as bad as Esav is, he knows that he wants his bracha from his father. So Yitzhak says, go out and get me some food. Now you stop and think, Yitzhak's a prophet, Yitzhak is a navi, Yitzhak was a korban on the mizbeach, Yitzhak was going to be shechted, yet you see what human nature is. He's a human being. And as a human being, before he gives the bracha, he needs to eat something to change the mood for the bracha. The bracha is going to be a more potent bracha if he's had a good meal you have the bracha. That's, I told you this, that on a Shabbos, we're the spiritual Shabbos, but we still sit down at a table loaded with food, because that enhances our approach to the ruchnias. By being in a good mood, that the food, the wine, the drink, whatever you're having at the meal, except for gefilte fish, which I don't like, but everything else that's at the Shabbos table, it picks you up and it puts you in a mood to celebrate Shabbos, and you tap into the ruchnias. So Yitzhak even giving a bracha, which is going to be a bracha that's going to be a prophecy for generations, yet there has to be this physical component of the enjoyment of the food that Yitzhak is going to eat. So he sends out Esav to get the food. Rifka shomas. Now, I just want to say before we go into this, I'm going to mention a few things. You can't ask me questions about. I want you to think about the concepts. Whatever the little detailed questions are, fill them in on your own. I want you to hear the overall picture, the concept. Rifka shomas v'daber Yitzhak el Esav beno. Yitzhak heard, v'yelech Esav asad alotzud side lovi. Esav goes out to hunt. Now, the big question here is, why doesn't Rifka just go to Yitzhak and tell Yitzhak, hey, you're misreading this whole thing, by the way. You're misreading Esav and Yakov over here. Esav, I see better than you. I know what's going on over here. There are many different approaches to it. One approach is that Rifka did not want to make Yitzhak sad, because the bracha that Yitzhak is going to give, the highest level of Kedusha is to be besimcha. And if Yitzhak is in a state of simcha when he gives Yakov the bracha, so that the bracha is going to have more potency. So she doesn't want to sadden Yitzhak by telling him what Esav really is, so that when Yitzhak gives the bracha to Yakov, the bracha is going to be coming from a Yitzhak who's in the highest level of joy. Number one. That's one approach. Approach number two is that the Rifka and Yitzhak, it was an interesting relationship. Rifka, remember when she first sees Yitzhak, what does she do? The first time she sees Yitzhak, when Eliezer brings her back, she's on the camel, and she says, who is that man that's very, very impressive looking man out in the field? What does she do? She slides herself down off the camel, and she hides her face. She's intimidated by Yitzhak. So there is an approach that Rivka's not ready to go. Yitzhak is on she's always had this kind of level of being in awe of Yitzhak, number two. Number three, we're going to see in a second how this whole thing is legitimate. Now, Yaakov's going to go in there. There's a certain legitimacy to going. I mean, aren't you wondering how you're allowed to steal a bracha? Go steal a bracha. It's like steal the bacon. You can't go just stealing brachas. How can you do this? So what does she do? V'Rifka amra el Yakov beno lemor. Hine shamati es avicha medaber Esav v'chicha lemor. Havia li tzayid v'asei li matami v'ochela v'avrecha lifnei Hashem lifnei mosi. She says, I heard your father say this. Now, pick 5 lines from the bottom. Now listen, put yourself in Yaakov's position. Your mother is talking to you now. Ve'ata b'ni shma b'koli. I want you to obey me. La'asher ani mitzaveh oscha. I'm commanding you. Right? First of all, it's a command. So the Mefarshim explain, why does Rivka turn this into a command, not a request? What was Esav's merit? Esav had one merit. What was Esav really good at? Honoring his father. Yaakov needs the merit of kibud ava'im to try to offset Esav's merit. And that merit begins right here, where Rivka says, obey me. I'm giving you a command from you have to honor your mother. Obey me. And put yourself in Yaakov's position. Yaakov's the man of truth. And she's about to tell Yaakov, I want you to start pulling a con. You're going to con your father over here. If you're Yaakov, that's the last thing in the world you want to do. The last thing you want to do is go con your father and act dishonestly. So she says, go bring me the food and I'm going to prepare it for your father. Vayomer Yaakov, bottom line. Vayomer Yaakov Rivka emo. Hein Esav achi ish sa'ir. My brother's hairy. Ve'anochi ish cholok. I'm smooth. Ulai yimusheni avi ve'isi beinav kimsateh ve'isi like klolo v'lo bracha. What if he touches me and he sees right through this whole thing, then I'm going to get a klala, not a bracha. He's going to curse me, not bless me. Now look what Rivka says to him. Vatomer lo imo alai kilalascha b'ni. I'll take your curse. Ach shma b'koli v'lechali. Just go get me the sheep. What do you mean I'll take your curse? How do you take somebody? I called it. I call the curse. How can you take a curse? What is this? It's not shotgun. Shotgun. I call it a shotgun. And everybody in the world respects shotgun. There are even halachas of shotgun, right? Right? You got to see the car. You got to be within dalet amos of the car. However shotgun works. There are rules for shotgun, right? Even my brother and I, we'd fight. I took money out of his drawers. But if one of us called something, there was a respect for it. I remember once around the way back for the basketball game. We were playing basketball. My brother was sitting in the car. I'm driving. My brother goes, I called the last 2 brownies. I'm like, oh, man. That's non-negotiable. He called it. There's a certain respect for that. Whatever else happens, whatever else I stole from him, I can't. What's going on? How can you call a klola? I'll take the klola. Oh, shkoyach. But I'm the one getting the klola. How can you call the klola? So the key to this is take a look at Targum Onkelos. 3 lines from the top in Onkelos. And this answers a lot of questions. Va'ameres le'ime, his mother said to him, Olai is amar b'nevua, I was told through prophecy, de lo yesu levatayalach, you're not going to get cursed. Bri, my son. Biram kabel mini v'izal sovi, just accept what I tell you and go do it. I was told through prophecy you're not going to get cursed. That's how Uncle is translated. Oh, it's a prophecy. Well, of course, Baruch doesn't give prophecy. He said, don't worry, Rifka, he's going to get prophecy. That means we're supposed to be doing this. Which answers why she didn't tell Yitzhak, for 2 reasons. Number 1, if I got the prophecy and he didn't, that means I'm supposed to know about this and he isn't. And if Yitzhak didn't get the prophecy and Rifka did, so then what do you call it? Then obviously this is supposed to happen. Number 1. Number 2, Rifka doesn't want to make Yitzhak feel bad. It's like the wife who figures something out at the table before her husband. You don't want to make your husband feel bad. The smart wife, makes any good idea, makes the husband think that it was his idea. That's a smart wife. And you certainly don't want to show up your husband at a table, especially when there are guests there. Right? You don't want to show your husband. So Rifka doesn't want to make Yitzhak feel bad. Well, I got prophecy and you didn't. So she says to Yaakov, take the thing. Vayelech vayikach vayave le'ima v'tasi v'matam kashrei v'tikach Rivka es bigdei Esav b'na agadol hachamudos asherita b'bayis v'talbeish es Yakov b'na akad. She puts on Esav's clothing on Yaakov. Veis oros gedoi ha'izim hilbisha al yadav v'achal kasar. She takes these hides and she puts it on his arms and goat hides. I mean, this Esav must have been a hairy guy. If you need goat skins, if Yitzhak's going to touch a goat skin and think it might be Esav, that means Esav was, this is a guy who's really hairy. So she puts it on Yaakov's, on his neck, and she puts it on his hands, on his arms. Okay? And then he comes to the father. Now take a look. Pick it up on Parsha Yudches. We're going to come back to this. Watch, this whole thing is a little bit difficult to understand. We got to get a perspective here. Vayavo el aviv. Vayomer, he walks in, he says, Avi, my father. Wants to speak as little as possible. The less you say, the less chance there is for voice recognition. I mean, they sound alike, but there's still going to be that difference. Vayomer hineni, mi'ata bini, who are you? Now, right off the bat, you see that Yitzhak suspects something might be up. Why? Because why are you asking who he is? You sent Esav out to bring food, and now Esav's coming back. Why is Yitzhak at this point asking, who are you? That means that Yitzhak himself is already sensing maybe something is up. Vayomer Yaakov elavi vanochi Esav bechorecha. It is I, Esav, your firstborn. Asisi kasher dibarte like kumna shovachla mitzedvi v'chor. Come sit and eat so that before you give me a bracha. Now here is one of the most difficult Rashis to understand. What did Yaakov say? Right column, 4 lines to the top. Anochi Esav bechor, is I, Esav, your firstborn. Look how Rashi, quoting the Medrash, look what Rashi says that means. Anochi hu hamevi lach. I am the one bringing you the food. Ve'esav hu bechorecha. Esav is your firstborn. What's Rashi doing?
Showing that he's not lying.
He's not lying. Oh, that's great. That's just great. You put on a costume, the man is blind, you're trying to steal a bracha. I never lied. It's like the teacher says in class, Itamar, why'd you throw that? I didn't throw it, I hurled it. Right? There's a very big difference. A very big difference. You throw. Let's be accurate over here. It's like the kid who jumps into this hotel swimming pool. So the guard sees him in the hotel swimming pool. He says, "Hey kid, can't you read the sign? It says no swimming allowed." Says to him, "That's not what it says." Says, no, swimming allowed. I learned Gemara. Anochi Esav Bechorach. I am Esav your first. I didn't say I'm Esav your first. I said, it is I who have brought the food. Esav Bechorach. What's going on here? The answer is Yakov allowed to be doing this right now? Huh? Oh, yes, he is. He had a prophecy. So he's allowed to be doing this. Are you ever allowed to lie? Sometimes it's a mitzvah. Sometimes it's a mitzvah. But not to lie. It's a mitzvah to veer off of the truth. In the classic example we've mentioned many times before, when a guy gets engaged, what do you say? So Beis Shammai says, Beis Hillel says, Kala no v'chasuda. You tell the guy, what a lovely, graceful kala you have. What a wonderful kala. Beis Shammai says, Kala kamoshi. Call it the way you see it. No, that's not what it means. It doesn't mean call it the way you see it, like, hey, you could have done better, buddy. No, that's not what he means. It means whatever good qualities she really has, so mention the good qualities. Don't go making anything up. Don't go making anything up. Beis Hillel says, guy gets engaged, so, oh, terrific. Oh, magnificent. Oh, magnificent. You're not impressed. You know her better. It's your sister. Right? You're thinking, well, all right, once in a while she may make you a meal that she doesn't burn. No. Yeah. So it's a machlokas. And now, according to Beis Hillel, is that a lie? It's not a lie. Because when you say what you should say, the definition of truth is not yes and no. The definition of truth is saying what you should say. Truth is to praise the kala. That's truth. Even if you're exaggerating just a little bit, even if you're overdoing it a little bit or a lot. Right? Even that's the mitzvah, that's truth. That's the definition of truth. But when you do it, try to minimize it. Is Yaakov allowed to be lying right now? Yes. But try to minimize it as much as possible. And one of the reasons is because when you do lie, it corrupts you. We are corrupted by the lie. That means if I have to lie, I have to lie, but should try to minimize it because of what's the effect on me? Forget the other person. What's the effect on me? And it's very easy to get into a pattern of lying. People who work in professions where you gotta, you could be a businessman or a lawyer, or whatever it is, or a politician, you don't even know the difference at a certain point between what's truth and what's false. You don't even know. I remember hearing an interview, I've mentioned this to you guys, I heard an interview with a guy in Israel. There was some business in Israel there was a group of politicians and a group of a union. There was the politicians and the union, and there was a middleman who was a lawyer. He was the negotiator between putting this deal together. So I heard the live interview. They were interviewing this guy on the radio. So the guy says to him, tell me something, Mr. Ploney. Did you ever have to lie? So the guy says, let's put it this way. There were some days when I told the truth. That's what the guy said, a live interview on the radio. There were some days that I told the truth. So when you lie and you fall into the habit of lying, it's going to have a corrupting influence on you. So Yaakov Avinu, even at this moment, Yaakov Avinu tries to minimize the lie as much as possible. Okay. So then he comes in, and Yitzhak gives him the bracha. And if you look on Pasuk Chaf Zayin, top of page 138. Vayigash vayishak lo, vayorach es reach begoda vayivarcheyu. Yitzchak kisses him, and he smells his clothing, and he gives him a bracha. Rashi says the scent of Gan Eden went in with him. Vayomer re'ei reach b'nei kirech sadeh sher berach Hashem. He smells like a field that God is blessed. The word begodov is related to the Hebrew word bogdov. It could be pronounced as bogdov, which means renegades. It's an unbelievable medrash here. The word Yitzhak smells Yaakov's renegades, and he blesses him. The scent of Gan Eden comes in with the renegades. What does that mean? So the medrash says there were two men in Jewish history, one during the time of the Greeks, one during the time of the Romans. One was called Yossi Meshisa, and the other was called Yakim Ish Tzroros. Yossi Meshisa was there when the Greeks entered the Beis Hamikdash, or the Romans. I get mixed up. I don't remember which one is which. Whatever it was, the enemy went into the Beis Hamikdash. He was a renegade Jew who had joined. He was a turncoat who went to the other side. And they said to him, okay, since you were on our side, you could go into the Beis Hamikdash and take whatever you want. So he goes into the Beis Hamikdash and he comes out with the menorah. Shlomi, it's like, maybe we could open that door over there to get some air. Thanks. He goes into the Beis Hamikdash and he comes out with the golden menorah. So they said to him, sorry, that's a little, that's excessive. That's for a king. A commoner shouldn't be taking the menorah. It's like somebody says, well, help yourself, and you take the whole tray. Everybody's here, help yourself. Take whatever you like. You just clean the table off. That's not what I meant. So for you to take the menorah, that's a little bit excessive. So they said to him, instead of that, you could have we'll give you 3 years worth of taxes. Right, well, we'll pay you tax, but you can't have the menorah. Go on into the Beis Hamikdash and take something else. And he says, no, listen, it's enough that I provoked my Creator once. I'm not going in there to take something else and provoke my Creator again. So they said, we'll give you 3 years a day. He says, I don't want that either. I'm done. I'm out of this. So they tortured him to death. They strapped him to a wooden, a carpenter's table, and they started sawing him apart limb by limb. And as he died, he was yelling, woe to me that I provoked my Creator. Right? So when it says that Yitzhak smelled the smell of the renegades, that means even a Jewish renegade does tshuva at a certain point. Even a Jewish renegade, you see, here's a guy who was so bad, yet there's a limit to what he's going to do. I'm going to turn back. That was Yossi Meshisa. That's what the Medrash says. There was another guy named Yakim Ish Tzroros. And his uncle was Yosei ben Yoezer. If you've learned Pirkei Avos, Yosei ben Yoezer was the head of the Sanhedrin in Pirkei Avos. Yosei ben Yoezer, Yosei ben Yochanan, Ish Yerushalayim. Yosei ben Yoezer was on a horse, and he was being led out to be executed by again, I don't remember the Greeks or the Romans. He was being led out to be executed. His nephew, Yakim Ish Tzroros, was a renegade who had joined the others. And he was riding on a nice stallion along with all the high officials of the enemies. And he says to his uncle, who's riding on the condemned man, so he says, look at the horse your master has put you on, and look at the horse my master has put me on. So Yossi ben Yehuda says, well, if that's the reward for sinners, then imagine the reward for people who did mitzvahs. He says, yeah, but nobody did mitzvahs as much as you, and look what's happening to you. So he said, yeah, well, if this is the punishment for people who did mitzvahs, imagine the punishment for people like you who are sinners. So at that point, the Medrash says the words penetrated him like the venom of a snake. And he went and he erected some sort of contraption where he put up a gallows with a sword down in the middle and a fire and a whole collapsible apparatus so he could fulfill on himself all 4 forms of misas beis din at one time. He hung himself, fell on the sword, the thing collapsed on him for a skila, and he got burnt while he was at it. He only did it once. But that was right. And then Yossi ben Yoezer, a heavenly voice went out and said that he entered Gan Eden 1 moment before Yossi ben Yoezer. That's what the Medrash says. When Yitzhak smells the renegades of the Jewish people, you see that even the renegades, there's always hope. The renegades of the Jewish people, these are people who were turncoats. They went to the other side completely. They were against the Jews, against the Judaism. Yet, there has the smell of Gan Eden also. V'yarach ezreach begodav. Those are the renegades. People will always come back. There's always hope somebody's going to come back. So, Yitzchak gives him this bracha. Okay. Now, here comes the kicker. Pasuk Lamed. Stay with us, gentlemen. Vayihi kasher kila Yitzhak levarech es Yakov. Yitzhak finished giving Yakov a bracha. Vayihi ach yotzo Yakov me'es pnei Yitzhak. Yakov leaves. Ve'esav achiv b'mitzeda. Esav comes in from the hunt. Vayaskam hu matamim vayavei la'aviv. He made a dish and he brings it into his father. V'yomer la'aviv yokum aviv yochal mitzed bedo b'avur tavarach. Hi, Dad, get up and eat because I made you some food. Now, what should Yitzchak's reaction be at this point?
You already gave me food.
No, what should his? Okay, you already gave me food. What should, if in Esav's mind, what should Yitzchak's reaction be?
Jump up and eat.
He should jump up. He says, "Oh, great! I'm hungry. What took you so long?" Something like that. V'yomer lo Yitzchak aviv miata. Who are you? At that point, the red light goes on, and Esav said, wait, why is he asking me, who am I? You sent me out to get you food, and I brought you food. I just came in and said, here, Dad, eat. It's one of those moments in life where you know trouble is coming, and you don't even know what the trouble is exactly. But it's like you're like, whoa, right? And then you're going to find out, right? Kaboom. Then you're going to find out. Now, miata, who are you? Right away. Vayomer ani bincha b'chor chesav. What do you mean? Vayecherad Yitzchak charoda gedola ad me'od. Yitzchak trembles, a great trembling. Rashi says he saw Gehenna up and up under Esav. Vayomer mi efa hu atzad side vayavi li v'ochal b'kol b'terem tavo v'archev. So who was it who brought me the food before you came, and I gave him a bracha? Gam baruch yeh. Indeed, he should be blessed. I don't understand what's going on. It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. I don't understand. Yitzhak realizes right now that he's been deceived, right? realizes that Yitzhak's been deceived. So Yitzhak turns around and says, oh, so who was that? Oh, he should be blessed. I understand. At that point, you should turn around and say he should be cursed. Why is he blessing him? And why is Yitzhak trembling? What's going on? So I saw a phenomenal explanation. You can't ask any questions. Any of the little details you fill in yourself. But the concept is a concept. The first question we should ask is, as far as costumes go, I mean, Yaakov's costume was not the most elaborate costume, right? He's got a what do you call it? He's got some goat skins on his arms. What if Yitzhak touches it and it slides off? Yeah. What if he fakes high and goes low and touches him on the stomach? There are a million and one things that could happen here. Number one. Number two, you see that when Yaakov walks in, Yitzhak immediately says, Hakol kol Yaakov v'yadayim yedei Esav. The voice is the voice of Yaakov. The hands are the hands of Esav. That means Yitzhak, how much, what are the chances this thing is going to succeed? So, we can assume that Yitzhak and Rifka have had a machlokas for a few years. Like Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Yitzhak and Rifka have a little machlokas here. About what? About Esav. They have a little dispute. What's the dispute? The dispute is what's Esav really all about. And Rifka is telling Yitzhak, Esav's a deceiver. And Yitzhak says, Esav's not a deceiver. I'm telling you, I know Esav. And this is an ongoing. Now, we're at the moment of truth. Rifka can't play around anymore. So what does she do? She sends in Yakov, who's the man of truth, with a flimsy costume. And he goes into Yitzhak. Yitzhak gives him a bracha. He's deceived. And at the moment that Esav walks in, what does Yitzhak realize? The moment Esav walks in, Yitzhak realizes, I've just been deceived by Yakov. Because if this is Esav, who was the other guy? The other guy was Yakov with a flimsy costume. Vayecherad Yitzhak charada gedola. Yitzhak trembles because Yitzhak realizes, if Yakov with a flimsy costume could deceive me, what's Esav been doing to me all along? And if Esav has been deceiving me, and I was going to give him a bracha, I almost gave away the entire destiny of the world to the wrong person. That's why Yitzhak is trembling. Vayecherad Yitzhak gedola, charada gedola. Because this is the moment he realizes what Esav has been doing all along. And that's why he turns around and then he says, Gam baruch yeh, he should be blessed. Yaakov should be blessed. Because now I realize she's been right all along. He's the one who should be getting the bracha. And that's why Yitzhak turns around and he gives Yaakov the bracha. So this is one approach. There are other approaches to the subject. I'm just telling you, this is one of Rav Shimshon Hall Hirsch. This is his approach. That the whole point of the deception was the deception. The whole point of doing it was that it should be discovered. Because otherwise, what chances are that it's not going to be discovered? You know he's going to find out. The whole point was that he should realize all along how he's been deceived by Esav. And therefore Yitzhak says, Gam baruch yeh. So now Esav screams. Kishma Esav divrei Yitzhak. Esav gets upset. So he says, hey, Dad, I want a bracha also. So then Yitzhak gives him bracha. Now look at Esav's bracha. On the next page, 140. Yitzhak decides he's going to give Esav a bracha. It's a remarkable bracha. Boy, you see history here. Vayomer Vayan Yitzchak Aviv, sixth line from the top. Vayan Yitzchak Aviv Vayomer Elav Hine Mishmane Haaretz Yemo Shevecha. You're going to dwell in a very rich land. Rashi says, if you look, just so you see, just so you see, I'm not making it up. Right column, 6 lines from the top. Mishmane Haaretz. Everybody see that? Right column 6. Zo. Anybody want to read that next word there, right with the little chick over there? Italia. Italia Solyavim, Italy. Right? Very rich soil, right? Very rich land. Very fertile area. Mishmane Haaretz Yeh Moshevecha, it's the Romans. Umitala shamayim el, and you're going to have the dew from the heavens. Val charbechaticha, you're going to live by the sword. What did the Romans do? Aren't they the ones who perfected warfare? They're the ones the Romans perfected warfare, right? They had the Roman formations and everything, right? They lived, they conquered, they basically conquered the entire world. You're going to live by the sword, but it's more than that. It's more than that. If I was writing it, he says, you're going to live by the sword, but you're going to serve your brother. Now, if I was writing to somebody live by the sword, you don't live by the sword. I mean, when you live by the sword, you could die by the sword, right? You live by the sword. You can also die by the sword. I would have written, you'll conquer by the sword. You'll emerge victorious. Why do you live by the sword? Why do you live by the sword?
You only stay alive through warfare.
You stay alive through warfare, but you can also die in warfare, right? You stay alive much better. You're better off not fighting wars at all. More women stay alive than men when there are wars, because women don't go to war, right? Then husbands come home. Then he really dies. But what do you call it? What does it mean? What does it mean you live by the sword? So the commentaries point out there's something called what energizes you. What energizes the Esavs of the world? And this goes back to that red color. What is the red? The excitement, the energy. I once met in Chicago, I met a gang member in Chicago. He was a Jewish guy, but he was a member of a gang. Right? He was a member of a gang. I treated him with respect. And so I was asking this guy, he was a friend of mine's brother, but he was a rough character. And so I asked him, like what do they do like on Saturday nights for entertainment? So I said, they go drinking and chasing. He said, then his eyes says, and sometimes we have a rumble, right? And that's when he lit up. Right? We have a rumble. That means the Esavs of the world. We need a certain, it's got to be, somebody mentioned about football, the violence, If you could watch MMA, what's it called, MMA, I saw it once. I mean, these guys looked like they were going to kill each other. If they would have killed each other. How much of that could you watch? The guys are basically, even boxing back in the day. Boxing, wow, his head snapped back. Did you see that? Wow, the sweat came flying off. Oh, neat. Even in 1991, they had that's Esav. If you're watching it for the hit, that's Esav. Wow, yeah, that was a good hit. Ooh, So even sports, watch a football game. You can watch it for the athleticism, or you can watch it for the hit. Well, let's see the hit. I remember going to a hockey game as a kid. There's a fight. So what does everybody do when there's a fight? They all stand up. I remember an old guy behind me. I was a little kid. I was about 12 years old. The old guy, sit down so we can all see. And everybody's on their feet while these two guys are clobbering each other. That's and we all got a bit of it in us, right? Sometimes more to it. If we really are enjoying that sort of thing, that's Esav. That's achar b'chatichya. That means we're getting energized by the violence of Esav. In the 1991, what was it, 91, the Gulf War. It was in 91, right? With Saddam Hussein. Now, he should rest in pieces. So Saddam Hussein he's bombing. So America's fighting against, and what are they doing? They're bringing in all these new weapons that they're testing out. People were watching destruction, right? Wow, you're taking that bomb right through the window. The whole house collapsed. Unbelievable. Give me some of those corn chips, will you? And you're having a Pepsi and a beer and corn chips while you're watching destruction. That's Esav. That's Esav. We all got a bit of that. That's Esav. That's achar b'chatichya. I got to have the hit. I got to have. The idea that if you have an argument, let's take it outside. Let's settle this outside. We'll settle it outside. I mean, we're having an argument. What are you going to gain by going? I'll tell you what. We'll take it outside. You go out and start without me. I'll meet you out there. What are you getting? What does that prove? You can hit me harder. It doesn't mean that I'm not right. What does that prove? What does that prove? That's the Esav. That need to see the excitement of life is which borders on violence and that's achar b'chatichya. That's the bracha to Esav. Okay. Now, Esav is unhappy, to say the least. So Esav decides he wants to kill Yakov, and Rifka decides that it's not a good idea, and so she decides that Yakov better go. Now watch what happens over here on page 142. Page 140. Look what Rifka does. Right? Rifka first says to Yakov, Rifka first says to Yaakov, listen, your brother is upset with you. You'll go to my brother's house, Lavan, and you'll stay there for a short time, and then I'll call you back when Esav calms down. Bottom line on 140. V'tomer Rifka el Yitzchak, katzti b'chayai mipnei benos ches. How does our scroll translate katzti mechayai? I'm disgusted with my life. Okay. Im lokeach Yakov isha mibnei ches ka'ila mibnos arz la milichayim. How could I live if Yakov takes a wife from the locals? Meaning, Rivka tells Yitzhak not a word about what's going on, about Esav and Yakov hating each other. What does she say to Yitzhak? I don't like this idea of Yakov marrying one of the locals. So Yitzhak understands. Vayikra Yitzhak el Yakov, he calls Yakov, vayavorech oso, he gives him a bracha. Vayitzaveu vayomer lo lo sikach isha mibnos Kenan, don't take a Canaanite woman. Kum lech paden aram besa besuel avi imecha, go to your grandpa Besuel. V'kach l'shcha misham isha mibnos Lavan achi imecha, take a wife from the daughters of Lavan. So why is Yitzhak why does Rivka want Yaakov to go? So they get killed. What does she tell Rivka? What does she tell Yitzhak? So you should get a shidduch. He did. So Yitzhak tells Yaakov, go in order that you should get a shidduch. Now, take a look at 2 lines later. Vayishlach Yitzchak es Yaakov vayilech paden aram alavan be'esu aram yachi Rivka ay Yaakov Esav. Vayar Esav ki beirach Yitzchak es Yaakov v'shilach oso paden aram lakachas b'isha. What does Esav see? He only sees one thing. They always say that Yaakov was sent off in order to get a wife. That's all Esav sees. That means Esav doesn't know that anybody knows that he hates Yaakov. How did Rifka know? What did Rashi say? How did she know? Ruach HaKodesh. Esav didn't say it to anybody. To the contrary, Esav kept it inside. Esav kept it inside. If you look back for a second where Esav says it, take a look back on 140, Pasuk Mem Aleph, right in the middle of the page, a little towards the top. Vayistom Esav es Yaakov. Everybody see that? Mem Aleph? About 10 lines from the top. Vayistom Esav es Yaakov al habracha shebercha vi. Esav hated Yaakov because of the bracha. Look at this next 3 words. Vayomer Esav belibo. Esav says to himself, Yikruvu yemei evel aviv argay. When my father dies, I'll kill Yaakov. How did anybody know what Esav was thinking? Says Rashi, Ruach found out. Rifka, next pasuk. Vayugad Rivka was told to Rivka. How did Rivka? Who told her? Who told her what Esav was thinking? Says Rashi, it was Ruach HaKodesh. Anybody know where else we find these a similar combination of words? It says Esav said, Vayemer Esav. Esav said in his heart. Anybody know where else we find that? A famous descendant of Esav. Close.
No, Korach.
Not Korach. No. Eliphaz is the son of Esav, a descendant. Vayomer Haman belibo. Vayomer Haman belibo. Right? Menachashverosh says, what should I do for a man that I want to honor? And Vayomer Haman says, well, who else would the king be thinking about except me? Right? But it's much deeper than that. Esav, remember we read last week's Parsha? Esav's compared to a pig. Why? Because the pig is the only animal that has the external kosher sign. He's got the split hooves, but inside is rotten. Vayomer Esav belibo, Vayomer Haman belibo. They're two-faced. The outside is this all a show. On the inside, what's going on? The inside is rotten. That's typical Esavness. That's the pig. That's exactly who Esav is. That's who Haman is. Haman is the arch descendant of Esav because he comes from Amalek, who is a son of Eliphaz. So Esav has it in the genes, and it passes down all the way through the generations till Haman, that Vayomer Haman belibo, the internal, the fake. It's all fake. It's all fake. It's all make-believe. It's like politics. They're all talking to each other. All these politicians, they're talking to each other. Not one of them trusts the other one. Everybody knows that the other one it's all a show, and you're putting on a show because really you want to be the most powerful one, and you don't trust the other guy because you know he doesn't trust you for good reason. And just like he doesn't trust me for good reason, I don't trust him for good reason. That's the typical. So Esav hears that, and therefore Esav, there's no urgency. He doesn't have to chase Yaakov. Yaakov's going to be coming back. So there's no urgency because he doesn't realize that Yaakov is running away because he's trying to flee from Esav. And therefore, Yaakov has this opportunity to get away, and he goes off to Padan Aram, and then we'll see tomorrow, Mitzvah Parshas Vayetze, how his shidduch works out.